Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you guys for the first episode. Welcome to the Upper Room Community Podcast, where you're here to be elevated in mindset, habit, and spirit. I'm your host, Raquel Sade, and I'm very grateful to be here with y'all today. It's been a long time coming, but we here and we made it. And I'm excited to get the ball rolling, to get the show on the road. And I'm happy to have you guys on this journey with me, in this journey of elevation, in this journey of just growing and maximizing our potential in every aspect of our life, in every area of our life. So let's get this started. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about, are you trained up, and better ways to bet on yourself. And this is very fitting for today's episode, mainly because I had to bet on myself in order to even start this podcast. It took a while. It took a lot of faith, and it had to take me getting out of the way, because a lot of the times when we try to control things, we actually stunt things from happening by trying to have total control of every aspect of our lives. We're trying to have total control of everything that's happening around us. And a lot of the times, fear can be masked in control. And I definitely had to learn that I am a very regimented person. I am a very scheduled person. I want things to go my way, the way I think it, the way I plan it. And then when it doesn't, I'm angst and I'm frustrated and I just don't know what to do. And a lot of that control aspect is masked in fear. And once I realized that, I'm like, I need to stop, because faith and fear cannot mix together at all. Either you're fearful or you're full of faith. You cannot do one or the other. You have to choose one or the other. So this is why that topic of betting on yourself is very much fitting for today. So we're going to get into it. I feel like too often in life, we let the hurdles and we let the factors cloud our minds and dictate our days. And eventually that lets time slip away from us, as well as our destinies and our calling slip away with that time that has passed us by. And, especially working a 9 to 5 or whatever you're doing, working a job, because a job and a career are very much two separate things. But especially when you're working a job, or you're going to school, or you're just letting finances and things like that get in the way, it allows you to forget about your goals, forget about focusing on bettering yourself, so that there can be a greater cause at the end, not just for you, but also the people that you feel led to help or feel led to help build up. And with working a job, they definitely pay you a salary to build their dreams, build their desires, and build what their goal in mind. And it causes you to forget about your own goals. It causes you to forget about your own destiny and your own plans, because we work these long hours, 40-hour work weeks. And one thing that COVID definitely taught me personally, and I'm sure it definitely taught a lot of us, that these 40-hour work weeks are very much unnecessary, and you do not need 40 hours to get your boss's job done. In all actuality, I feel like I functioned better working hybrid, and I functioned better not having to go into the office every single day for 8 hours a day. And it definitely takes a toll on our minds, and takes a toll on our energy and our strength, because by the time we get home, it's like, well, I just want to relax. Like, I've been on go all day. I was being told what to do all day. And now that I have time for myself, I don't even want to do anything to benefit myself, because I am tired. And I completely understand that, because I was there. And it is frustrating, but we have to put ourselves first at the end of the day. Like, It's going to be long nights. It's going to be early mornings. It's going to be frustrates, headaches. You know, the road to life is not easy. Not easy. The road to life is a very hard road, and it's not for the faint, but it's very rewarding at the end of the day. There's a lot that you will get out of it if you just put yourself first and choose life. Not choosing survival, but choosing life. Because being in survival mode, it doesn't give you any leg room to have an abundance. Because you're just operating off of, I need to pay my bills, I need to feed my family, I need to do what I gotta do to just stay afloat. But we're not trying to just stay afloat. We're trying to swim, we're trying to move, we're trying to go from destination to destination. We're not just trying to stay stagnant in this one place, trying not to drown. We're trying to move. Growing up in a society, you know, God bless America, but growing up in a society where our country was built off of the backs of migrant workers and hard labor on the poor, we've been conditioned as children to put our dreams aside, put our imaginations aside, and choose something more realistic. I know I remember in elementary school we used to have career day, and you know, during career day everybody wants to be a doctor. Not saying anything's wrong with being a doctor, that's not what I'm saying, but everybody just wanted to be a doctor, wanted to be a policeman, wanted to be a teacher, and those are all great professions, but they've placed us in a box growing up. They definitely placed us in a box of being realistic, and there's so many more options and ways to go about life without having to be a fireman, a policeman, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer. There's so many different aspects in life, and a lot of times, because we have not been opened up to that horizon of opportunities and the plethora thereof in life, in regarding how you make your money, how you're thriving as a person, how you're helping and benefiting the community and the world as a whole, we don't know what we want to do, because it's like, well, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be a lawyer, I don't want to be a teacher, I don't really want to go to college, but society says I have to do this, so I guess that's just what I'm gonna have to do, and I'll figure it out along the way. And that just causes us to, one, be in debt, two, be in a job that we have no interest in at all, and three, it definitely weighs us down, because we start to reflect, like, where has my time gone? Where has my life gone? And what did I do with it? How can I get my life back up and running? It's very much systematically placed that way, so that this country can work and thrive and function off of the backs of people that put the time in, long hours, in order to be these essential workers that are needed to make this country flow the way that it does. The school system that we have today started about almost 200 years ago, and during like the Industrial Revolution. And the main purpose of starting that was to create factory workers. Before the school system began, education was only reserved for the elite. Education was only for the rich. And however, they wanted to create factories, they wanted to create many things to get this nation flowing and make this nation thrive and rich. And so they had to figure out a way to conform the minds of people to become workers, so that this country can thrive in a certain way. And that definitely started with the children. Train up a child in the way that it should go, so that when it departs from you, they'll already be doing what it is that you've trained them up to do in the first place. So that's what our society did. They put us in school, and they taught us how to be diligent and effective workers. And you can see that through a bell system. Our schools very much looked like factories. You had the loud, now, technology is different. The bells are like in the speaker system. But I remember growing up, like the bells, it was those loud, round bells, metal bells, and they ding, 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 very loud. And those bells were in the factories. And they use those bells for lunch, and they use those bells to cue you in when to start working. And very much in factories, you had different stations, you had different segments of where you're working at. And they also too put that in the school system so that you're conditioned to become that worker. Like 30 minutes for math, 30 minutes for science, 30 minutes for history, but then you get minimal time to do extracurricular activities that helped nurture and grow your imagination and your creativity as a human being, because we are creative. We were created from a creative being, which instilled we were made in his image, which caused us to be creative, which caused us to want to create in various ways. So we definitely had minimum time to be creative in school, minimum time to harness our imaginations and nurture them, to help them grow and cultivate, to change world systems. Because with your imagination is so powerful, you can change the world with it. And with your imagination, you can see the world that you're in now, but imagine it in a different way, and imagine how you can become that solution to those issues in the world system, to then create a new world system where more people can thrive, more people can be happy, more people can become benefited by that solution that you gave to the world. Imagination is important because it helps to give us hope, and it helps to fuel our faith. And you can't have great faith without a great imagination behind backing that faith, because it takes imagination to see yourself in the spirit where you would like to be, and where you see yourself being called to be, and having that manifest here on earth. Without imagination, it's pretty much impossible to see yourself doing what it is that you're called to do, to see yourself doing what it is that can change a nation, that can change a community, that can change a people. You have to see that first before you make it happen here in the physical earth realm. And imagination is very much important to cultivate that thing and to bring that thing to life, so that it's effective not only for you, but also the people that you're called to help and affect. And even in the Bible, it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. Faith is very much a substance. It's a physical, obtainable thing. You can grow your faith. And with growing your faith comes with growing your imagination. And if your faith is the fuel to get that very much thing that is unseen in the seen realm, you have to work on your imagination. And since we have control, total control over our minds, we might as well use that in order to build up our minds and create something that we don't see here on the physical, but it will be here if we actually operate in our faith and operate in our imagination and make these things happen. So if faith is the very thing we need to obtain greater, it's very important that we work on cultivating our imaginations, and we work on expanding our imaginations and to see more than what we just see here physically. And it's like I definitely travel. I know growing up in a hood, or growing up in a area where it's mainly working class or low middle class, it's hard to see something greater than that. And I remember when I first went to LA, and we went on like a little drive through, the hills and Beverly Hills and the Valley and all these places. It was like it literally unlocked a part of my brain, and it made me think to myself like, yo, Raquel, you're not thinking big enough. Because look at all this access. Look at everything that's out here. And I have never seen that before. I've seen beautiful houses, and like in New York, like growing up out here, I've seen some nice houses passing from town to town, but it was nothing like going to California. It very much expanded my mind and my imagination. It caused me to say, I'm limiting myself. And when you're limiting yourself, you're limiting the power of God. You're limiting Him to do more, because His thoughts are not our thoughts and because His ways are not our ways. We have to think greater than what we see right now. And that's what traveling and looking at different real estate, looking at different cultures and the way people live, just looking at the access that there is in this world definitely helps to expand your mind and expand how you see yourself in the future, because we're so limited in certain communities to see these things. So that's why you have to get out. You have to see better for yourself. But the only way you can see better for yourself is if you expand on that beautiful imagination that God gave you, that beautiful ability to create something new. But creation starts in the mind first before it manifests here on earth. So that's the importance of having an imagination, cultivating your imagination, and making your imagination work in your favor. Betting on yourself is very much a process, especially if you're a person that already has a system going for yourself, whether that's an effective system or an ineffective system that you have going. But it's a lot of those systems that we have going for ourselves that need to be broken, because those systems are what keeps us in a crippling state of comfort. Even if you're a spontaneous person, you definitely have some form of system or some form of ritual that keeps you in a box and keeps you in a crippling state of being where you are in that moment and not even wanting to break out, because you're so comfortable in it, because you've been doing these systems for such a long time. And when you are betting on yourself, it's important to break off those systems, break off those things that you are accustomed to, because a lot of those things that we are accustomed to holds us back from greater, holds us back from maximizing our potential. So the problem with the routines that we already have is that these routines are the very things that need to be broken off in order to initiate change. And a lot of the times we fill our days with time fillers, and before we know it, it's a new year, because we have a lot of tendencies that we do on a daily basis that eats away at our time and eats away at better things that we could be doing to better ourselves and to better our situations. And you can't make yourself a better person until you choose to sacrifice something. And depending on what that sacrifice is, you need to self-reflect, and you need to see if whether or not that sacrifice is worth it to you, to become that better person, to become that person that you're envisioning yourself to be. And the greater risk, the greater reward. And I say the bigger sacrifice, the bigger the reward, because sacrifice, you have to give up something to obtain something better. And that's very much something that we have to understand with growing. That's something we have to understand with obtaining new things, because it is very much insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. You need to sacrifice some things in order to see a change in your life. Sacrifice your time. You have to sacrifice your self-pleasure. Sacrifice your toxic ways that you hate, but you're so accustomed to it that you just continue to do it because that's what you've known for such a very long time. Every bold decision you make comes with a sacrifice, and you just have to see for yourself if you're willing to make that sacrifice in the moment to make that very bold decision. And I know a lot of us tend to say like a newer version of yourself is a better version of yourself. But I truly believe that a newer version of yourself is a better version. There's a lot of things you need to kill off. There's a lot of habits you need to kill off. There's a lot of people that you need to kill off or, do away with for a moment in order to obtain that better version of yourself. And when you realize how far you've come, how much of a better person you are, you realize so many things that you've put away, so many things that you've thrown out of your very mind, so many things that you've thrown out of your old self. Like, I know a lot of times I tend to self-reflect because it's very humbling. And when I look back at who I used to be, it's like, wow, I'm nothing like that person anymore. And it's not that I had in my mind to become a better person. I just had in my mind to break off those things that were keeping me stagnant so that I can see different results. And in time, that is what makes you better. But I think we need to shift our focus to killing off certain things rather than focusing on just becoming a better person. Because you say you want to become a better person, but it's like, how do I become that better person? You have to focus on what it is that you're doing right now that's keeping you stagnant. You need to focus on those things that you're doing right now that is keeping you in the very same place that you were before. And once you shift your focus to those things, on eliminating those blockades or eliminating those places that are keeping you bound in life, then and only then will you elevate to become a better person. Some sacrifices in life, are only for a season. They're only temporary. And during my journey of sacrificing, I've definitely sacrificed my time and very much my social life. Like, I used to be outside, especially like it's summertime, this is the prime time to be outside. But I shifted my perspective, like looking at when I was outside, what did I achieve while being outside so much? Like, I'm about to be 25 next year, and that's a big milestone. And you have to kind of like just look at yourself and see your patterns. Like, was me being outside beneficial to the future me, or was it beneficial to me in the now? And I'm focused on the future. So I'm going to have to sacrifice something that pleases me right now, that pleases my flesh, because greater is here for me. But I have to step into that. I have to step into being that greater person, being that person that I see myself being in the future. You have to step into that now. Like, if you see yourself as a music producer for great artists, you have to see yourself and operate in being that music producer who operates in excellence every single time. You have to see yourself and act on being that person at that very specific time before you actually become that person. Like, the only how you become that person is if you become it. You have to become it to become it. And it sounds funny, but you really do. Like, you really have to put away old things, put away childish things. Because even in the Bible, Paul says, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I spoke like a child, I did childish things. But now that I'm a man, I put away childish things, and now I'm doing things that a man should do. Man meaning man, human. And we have to, as human beings, put away those childish things, put away those things that are hindering us, and become that person now, that new person now. Make a decision, not a choice, because a choice means you have options. When you make a decision, you don't have any options left. This is your only option to become that person that you see yourself in the future, and operate on that to the fullest. Other sacrifices tend to be permanent because it completely affects your soul. And your soul is being your mind, will, and emotions. And anything that affects your mind, will, and emotions in a negative way needs to be destroyed and needs to be done away with. Like, during these last 3 years of my life, I definitely had to go through a process of like self-deliverance, and just deliverance in general. Deliverance from negative self-talk, deliverance from anxiety, deliverance from anger, and deliverance from a lack of trust in God. And just anything that tainted my beauty as being a child of God. Anything that tainted and diminish the power that's within me. I had to be delivered from that in order to even be here and sit in front of y'all and do this podcast. I had to be delivered from a lot of things, and those were not temporary sacrifices, but those were permanent sacrifices. Those were things that I knew that if I continued on with these habits, I will not become that person that God is calling me to be. I will not become that person that is supposed to be called to help a plethora of people, help a community of people, help the people that were pushed off to the side, help the people thrive. Like, I cannot become that person still holding on to the very things that are holding me back. And if I'm holding myself back, then how can I help elevate other people if I'm still down? I can't fill from an empty cup. And those permanent sacrifices, for a while, it's a process. Like, it takes time because you've grown so accustomed to these toxic ways. You've grown so accustomed to these things that are hindering you and are holding you back. And, you've nurtured these things for such a very long time. But it comes a point in life when you got to realize, like, I need to move. I need to be better. And in order for me to be better, I need to eliminate those things that were holding me back. I need to, quote unquote, die to self, meaning die to my flesh, die to those desires that are very toxic and that taint my soul, and live in the spirit. Looking at the depths of your soul calls for self-evaluation, reflection, and especially self-deliverance. The only way to excel is by breaking off those chains and breaking off those things that were keeping you bound in the very first place. And delivering yourself, like, self-deliverance comes in many forms. But one thing that is constant in self-deliverance is discipline. And you very much need discipline in order to deliver yourself from those things that were keeping you stuck, that were keeping you bound, and that were keeping you stagnant, keeping you far from growth. You need discipline in order to grow past those things and make a decision to never pick up those things ever again. Studies show that it takes about 3 months for your brain to develop a new neural pathway. And a neural pathway is a connection of brain cells that develops as you do a certain task. It makes the task easier for you to do it without putting as much thought into it, because the brain is always going to find ways to do things without having to use as much work or energy. So this process of creating a new neural pathway proves how impactful discipline is in every single area of your life. Obviously, starting off first, it's never easy, but the more you're doing it, the more consistent and you are at it, the easier it will get for you. And it just shows that you definitely need consistency and you definitely need discipline in order to maximize your potential and in order to become that person that you see yourself in the future. Because the future is now. We're living in the future as we live in the present. A future is a minute from now. So to become that future, you just make that decision like, yo, I'm tired of living this way. I'm tired of holding myself back and being my own worst enemy. And from this day on, I'm making the decision to become that person I want to be. And it only takes that one thought. It only takes that one decision to actually make this happen. And with self-reflecting, just look back and say to yourself, like, what are the things that I'm doing in this moment that are keeping me stagnant? What are the patterns that I'm doing that are keeping me stuck, that are keeping me in this place that I've been in for years and I have no idea of getting out? Look at your days. Evaluate yourself as you're moving. Don't just do things without thinking. Evaluate how much time you're spending doing a specific task, and seeing how you can replace that task with something beneficial that can help change you in this very moment. All it takes is self-evaluation and seeing where it is in life that you can switch that routine that you're doing and replace it with something beneficial. Replace it with something that is going to build you up in that moment in time. And I just hope that like this very much registers with everyone. I really hope that in looking at this video or listening to this audio during this time, you were very much self-reflecting on what it is, the things that you're doing, how you're doing it, how much time you're spending doing these things, and how you can replace these habits that are keeping you down and keeping you bound, and replace them with something that can elevate you and something that can free you from such terrible bondage that you've been in for such a long time. And just realize that a lot of these things are just temporary. What you see now is temporary. It can be permanent, but it's up to you to make those things temporary. And when you are elevating yourself, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're not just doing it on your own, but you're doing it for the people you love. You're doing it for who you're called to affect in life, because we're all called to people. We're all called to somebody. And just think about the end goal in mind. Think about how when you change your life, you're also helping to initiate change in others. And that just creates a cycle of blessings. It creates a cycle of prosperity. And once you go there, like, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back to those areas that kept you bound and kept you stuck and kept you at a low level of thinking, a low level of spirit, a low level in habit. And once you find that rhythm and that groove of operating in excellence, you'll never want to go back. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and comment if you're here on YouTube. And if you're here on podcast, make sure you share it with somebody. Share it with your loved ones. Share it with your friends. And just reflect on yourself. Just think what it is that I can do to become higher in mindset, habit, and spirit.